Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about free will versus the hand of God, and how a fair number of people actually believe that they are righteous and holy, whether they're Muslim or Christian or Jew or Buddhist. And of course, they're only religious and holy one day out of 7. Other days they're raping and torturing and murdering and stealing from the rest of us. But on that one day, they think of themselves as really cool. And they actually believe that when the dead brown dwarf star passes between us and our sun, and the Earth flips end for end, they actually are not worried. They actually believe that their God, whomever that might be, is actually going to reach their hand down and physically pluck them up into the sky and carry them off to paradise. They believe this, just as they also believe that they are good and holy, because one day out of 7 they do not rape, do not torture, do not steal, do not lie from the rest of us. And what I've seen so far in my experience here is that God, if God exists, is a good mother. And she takes care of us when we're little, and we need someone to burp us or feed us or make sure we don't put our hand into the fire. But being a good mother, she eventually says, you've got to learn on your own. So she's not going to be there every time to catch us when we fall. Because if she did that, we'd never learn how to pick ourselves up again. That's what a good mother does. She lets us make mistakes, and as hard as it is on her to watch, she has to let us learn on our own. And I also remember the fairy tale that, if we have been, this is not a fairy tale, we've been here, you and I, on this world for 2.5 billion years. The fairy tale is that every 32,000 years, some of us, our older brothers and sisters, realize the universe is electrical, and to leave this world is pretty easy. And so the best and the brightest of us, every cycle, between every event, leave. Because they decided, there are better places to be. We're old enough to leave home now. And when the best and the brightest of you leaves and never comes back, who does that leave behind? Well, that's you and me, the morons, the ones who haven't figured it out yet. So tonight I thought we might chat about choose not to serve. And let's talk about people who are true morons, our masters. They worship Satan. Doesn't matter if you believe in Satan, doesn't matter if you believe in God. Our masters do. Our masters actually believe themselves to be gods, or the next best thing to it. The interesting thing about our masters is they hate us, you and me, with a passion, with a mindless, gibbering hatred. They hate us. They love nothing more than to hurt us. But they have a really big problem. None of these semi-gods or god kings or pharaohs or whatever they want to call themselves today, not one of these god kings or queens has ever made a pot of coffee. Imagine an old Charlton Heston movie about Egypt and the pharaohs and Moses and everything, and we've all seen them. And there's, Pharaoh Yul Brynner sitting up on a stone throne, and he's Pharaoh. He's the God King. He's the living embodiment of God, which is what our masters think of themselves. Now imagine, in this vast palace of stone and tens of thousands of slaves, servants. Imagine Pharaoh excusing himself, getting up off the throne, wandering into the kitchen, and making himself a pot of coffee. Really hard to picture, isn't it? Pharaoh making a pot of coffee in the kitchen. Well, it's hard to picture because it doesn't happen. None of these great leaders, these great rulers of mankind, our masters, have ever made a pot of coffee. Not one of them has driven a car in decades. Not one of our great masters, our great leaders, these God kings, has ever done the laundry. Not one of these great leaders of men has ever even touched cash. Picture, again, Charlton Heston movie. There's Charlton Heston being Moses or whomever, and he's talking to Pharaoh. And imagine Pharaoh up there on his throne, handling money, getting in the car, the chariot, driving himself to Target, and looking for a bargain on underwear. Picture that for a second. You can't, because Pharaoh, the God King, he wouldn't drive himself to a Target. He doesn't even know what a Target is. And yet, these God Kings, these great rulers of mankind, they're telling us how to live our lives. Picture Pharaoh, for example, driving himself to the local Vons, the local Ralphs, the Price Club, Costco, walking into Costco, whipping out his Costco card, grabbing a shopping cart and looking for discounts. Filling his cart up with stuff, Pharaoh, complete with the fez and everything, or I forget what it's called, the big hat thing, the crown, walking through Costco, pushing a cart. He goes up, he stands in line at the cashier, a God King, pushing a cart, with his new Sony disc player. He's got a flat screen TV from LG. He bought 10 pounds of cheddar cheese, sliced. Picture Pharaoh doing that, the God King, standing in line at the Costco, ready to check out. Imagine the God King, Pharaoh, unloading his cart, swiping his card, pulling out cash, getting change back, putting the stuff back into his cart, Pharaoh, and then wandering out to the car, trying not to be run down in the parking lot, as we all have. Imagine Pharaoh unpacking his cart into the trunk of his car, his Dodge Dart, his Saturn, whatever. And imagine him actually putting his cart away. Then, before he leaves, he stops at the Costco gas station and gets some discount gas. Imagine Pharaoh, the God King of Egypt, pumping gas into his Ford Saturn and then driving home. I can't picture it. I'm telling you the story and I'm asking the question. I personally can't picture it. You know why? Because Pharaoh, the God King, has servants, has slaves. So Pharaoh, the God King, would never dirty his own hands by making a pot of coffee. Old King George, George IV, if you're keeping track of our British rulers, old George Bush, once somebody decided to portray him as a man of the people, a regular Joe. And I can't remember if this was before, during, or after when he was president of the corporation known as the United States of America, Inc. Somebody, I'm sure they're either dead or fired, well, at least fired, they may be dead as well, came up with the idea of George IV, old George, Magog, the fellow who created all of the drug trafficking connections we now have with Asia that the top 1,000 corporations make all their money on, and all of the banks around the world trade drug money with. Old George, they took him to a store, I don't remember if it was a department store or a grocery store. But they had him buy a few things and had him check out, just as I've described to you with the Costco thing. And old George was completely mystified and puzzled by everything he saw. Because old George Bush, the great leader of the Western world, the regular Joe, an average guy, had never gone shopping before in his life. He'd never been in a department store. He'd never been at a checkout counter. And what really puzzled him was the barcode scanner. He'd never seen one. How is somebody who's never been in a department store, how are they qualified to tell us how to live our lives? If somebody who's never been without money after going to the ATM and realizing they forgot a deposit and they can't pay for anything, how are they qualified to tell us, you and me, how to live? This is what enrages our masters. Not only do they hate, despise, loathe us, but they need us. Because I guarantee Barack Obama, the current pharaoh, the current God King, the guy who's not even an American citizen, who's not even black, I guarantee you that Barack Obama, the guy from Kenya, does not get up in the morning at the White House and make himself a pot of coffee. Because he doesn't know how. He has servants who do that for him. Barack Obama has never done the laundry. He's never cooked a meal. He's never been to the bank. He's never had to drive a car. And he's going to tell us how to live? Ben Bernanke, this great financial genius, he's never been in a Target in his life. He's never used an ATM machine. He's never touched cash. I guarantee he wouldn't be able to find a Target. He wouldn't even know what a Target is. For those of you who are not Americans, Target is a major department store chain in the United States. Ben Bernanke has never even been in a bank to stand in line like you and I have. He's never used an ATM machine, ever. He's probably never driven a car in his entire life. I guarantee he's never walked into a Denny's and ordered breakfast. None of them have. So how are these great God kings supposed to know anything about you and me? They hate us, they fear us, they loathe us, they despise us. But without us, Barack Obama's not getting his coffee in the morning. Ben Bernanke is not getting his suit pressed and returned to him. He's not getting clean underwear without us, because he wouldn't know where to go to buy it. None of these people have touched cash in, if they ever did, in decades. You know why? Because as Satan worshipers, they've actually put a curse on all the money that they print, because we don't print our own money. The Federal Reserve does. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned offshore corporation owned by our masters. Now, it doesn't matter if you believe in black magic ritual or curses. It doesn't. It doesn't matter, because our masters do. Really good time to go to rense.com, R-E-N-S-E, and look up a fellow by the name of Tim Refat. Rense.com, R-E-N-S-E.com, The Jeff Rense Show. Go into his audio archives and pull up all of the interviews with Mr. Tim Refat, R-I-F-A-T. He's an expert in Europe on black magic satanic ritual, and he will tell you and give you a wonderful education on our masters' beliefs in black magic, the rituals they perform, the curses they cast. It doesn't matter what you and I think about this. Our masters believe it. And it must be working, because a small handful of these creatures own us outright. Well, own you. I've declared my sovereignty in writing according to black magic ritual, and so I'm free. But the reality is, they hate us, they loathe us, they despise us, they fear us. But they can't live without us. So I'm thinking, choose not to serve. What happens if the God King, in this particular moment in time, Obama, puts in a call for a cup of coffee and he doesn't get it? Because someone decides not to make it for him. They don't say no, there's no violence, there's no defiance, they just don't do it. And when he asks them why, where's my coffee, they just stand there and they say nothing. Let's go a step further. Let's say Obama decides to nuke Pakistan. He picks up the call, waits for the White House operator to pick up the line. Nobody does. There's no violence. There's no defiance. There's just doesn't do it. That means that Obama has to get out of bed with whatever gay hooker he's in bed with for the night, probably left over from little King George's collection of boys. Then he's walking around in his PJs, walking around the White House looking for someone who will get him a phone connection to the Pentagon so he can order them to nuke Pakistan. Can't find anybody. He asks somebody a question. They don't answer. They don't say no. They don't do any kind of act of violence. They just don't answer. They choose not to serve. Well, see, now Obama's got a problem. Because if he can't get anybody to get on the phone for him to call the Pentagon so he can order the generals there to nuke Pakistan, how's he going to do it? Because he doesn't know how to use the phone. And if he did, he doesn't know the number. And I doubt he knows what the white pages are. And I doubt seriously he'd know who to call. Because he has servants for that, as all good God Kings do. This fellow Ben Bernanke that none of us have ever heard of before is all of a sudden the money czar who's telling us how to spend money and who should have money and who shouldn't have money. What if he doesn't have a clean suit laid out for him? He's got a problem because he doesn't know how to use the laundry machine. He doesn't know where the laundry machine is. He'll have to go to his meeting in a dirty suit. What a shame. Choose not to serve. What are they going to do? See, without us, they don't exist. Without us to do their bidding, the God Kings, our masters, Pharaoh, is kind of stuck. Without us, they can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. They can't even make a cup of coffee. What would they do if we, you and I, choose not to serve? No violence, no defiance, simply silence. How would they live? Who would feed them? Do you think Barack Obama, when he got hungry at the end of the day, would walk to the nearest McDonald's for a burger and fries and a Coke? How would he pay for it? He hasn't touched money in his whole life. How would he find it? Would he even know what a McDonald's was? The bottom line is, without us doing their bidding, the God Kings, our masters, would starve to death in their own rooms because they don't know how to do anything except be God Kings. Sort of makes you wonder, why are we listening to people who hate us, who loathe us, who despise us, who fear us, and only want to hurt us? The only way they can hurt us is if we let them. Why are we letting them hurt us? I think we should leave them alone. I think we should leave them alone with each other. I think we should leave them alone to die. an ancient blessing, an ancient hope, a dream for a good friend or for a beloved stranger. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.